All right, this is the product UX weekly sync for product analytics, July 26th, 2023. Look back at last week's action items, which, oh man, we've done the same thing for like 3 weeks in a row. I don't think we had any action items from last week or the week before. I think we would have covered them between now and then. So then moving on to reviewing any questions about upcoming implementations. There's been a lot of great discussion in the dashboard design issue, going back and forth on what the MVC looks like and some of the longer term vision. I've been trying to really talk about that long term vision. MVC is this is fine, kind of the scope down version of things that you and I had talked about. I don't think there's anything more there. I think the team has been asking questions in the issue, which is great. Go through that, I think. So then review upcoming design issues for what should be the next milestone. I wanted to talk about specifically 16.3, make sure that we're not missing design for anything that's pending. The only issue that's before in dev is the status that I see. Sorry, there's two. Is the design for the custom dashboard flow, and then add product analytics to experiment feature list. Has a UX label on it.
Is it?
I don't think it really needs any UX though.
I'm checking. Yeah, because I definitely missed that one.
Yeah, I think this is just there's an existing toggle that when we get to the beta, instead of users having to manually onboard them with feature flags and specifically setting a project, this will take care of that. I will toggle on the product analytics feature for everything in my group or in my namespace, and it'll be available then. They can go in and set things up. So I don't think we actually need any UX on that. So we can probably remove the UX label from that.
Okay. Can you just like share it also in the documents? I have a quick look at it. I also don't think we need to schedule design time for this, but
no, I don't think there's any design done. I think it's just like by default got a UX label or auto labeled.
without no ID. Okay. Yeah.
And I'll share my screen real quick just to look at the. So the same way that you enable code suggestions, you can enable experiment features. We're going to add product analytics to the list of things that get enabled, and this existing toggle gets turned on. So I don't think that's existing UX. It's all background. I don't think there's anything there.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else in 16.3 you want to talk through while we're on that topic?
No, I guess our priority is the MVC for the custom dashboard flow, right?
Yeah. Making sure we get that design locked down so we can start implementation in 16.4.
Cool. Yep.
All right, so then 16.4 and beyond, as we start thinking about that release and others going forward as we get closer to beta, the things that were top of mind for me were the implementation of the dashboard designer, the MVC that we've talked through, and then some. I don't know how to form up the research yet, but I can talk to Nick about that. Visualization designer. We have a scorecard against it. We have an existing implementation. The approach I'd love to take is go show it to users and walk them through it because it's there. It's just hidden. You can't easily access the feature, but you can get to the feature through a URL, see what they think of it, have them build visualizations and understand where there's gaps from a user perspective, and then take that into a solution validation round of here's what the flow should look like. And then we can revamp that as we actually make the feature generally available, not the whole product analytics feature set, but plug that back in.
Yeah, we could do kind of some unmoderated testing, I think, with that, because like if we can provide people with a URL, an environment when they create it, we can just give them a task and ask them to use the current visualization designer and get their feedback on it.
Yeah, we can take that approach. I think we'd have to, the way that we've locked down permissions, we'd have to sort through that, but that's a detail. We could figure it out.
I think there's I don't know if that still exists, but I remember at some point we created environment for testing. So we could create some kind of like GitLab environment that has everything ready for them to just jump in.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, well, we can think through that. We'll talk to Nick, like I said, try to figure out what the best path forward is there. And then usage quota, the user story map that we've put together so far. Starting to put together some rough, I think, mocks of that, and talking through users, through the problem with users, make sure they understand it and they anticipate having it. It's kind of hard to say, hey, do you have this problem for a product that we haven't released yet? So framing it up in the context of like CI minutes or usage or something, and giving it to them to talk through. I think we might need to take a more hands-on approach with that because it is a very GitLab specific type of problem, I think.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, since I assume, I think we kind of talked about this a while back, but since GitLab already worked on a similar experience for storage and CI minute, I'm assuming that there's already some research existing, so some of the flows might be already almost pinpointed. So I wonder if we necessarily need to go into validation with that. As in, there's already a flow to purchase extra CI minutes or extra storage. So maybe we're just gonna branch into that and give the opportunity to buy extra events. And that's about it, I think.
So you're talking about the purchase flow or the flow of seeing what I've used so far?
So both actually, because I think both are available. Like we already have usage quota pages in the app that, if I'm not mistaken, are actually already showing you both storage and CI minutes. So yeah, I guess the thing to do is just kind of figure out how we can branch into that. And we might be able to rely on previous validation instead of like creating our own. Like that would save quite some time, I think.
Yeah, I'll look in Dovetail for any previous validation. I can tell you, we didn't do any on the CI minutes side. So I know that that doesn't exist, but there might be something from a different.
I worked on the storage side of it, because at some point it was allocated to growth and then it moved to fulfillment. And for storage, I can tell you that we did validation, but I don't think we had Dovetail at the time. So maybe it's somewhere in Google Drive or something. So I could look it up as well.
Yeah, if you can find that, that'd be great. That'd be a great.
But it was really, really like preliminary stuff, so it may have changed quite a lot.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm gonna assign that to you. Cool. Does that seem like? Do those seem like the right things to go tackle for 16.4 and beyond? Without going back to our top list of dashboard designer, start getting user feedback on the visualization designer, and then the usage quota work that we need to do before GA.
Yeah, to me that seems to be like the core flows that we need to have crisp before releasing. And yeah, sounds good.
All right. It looks like we have a little bit of time. I did kind of want to look at the usage user story map.
Sure.
If that works for you.
Yeah, I haven't been able to spend too much time on it yet, so.
All good. So the process so far has been the team got together and brainstormed a bunch of tasks I didn't do a
Mhm.
good job of framing of this is specifically around I got a bill and want to understand what used product analytics consumables that contributed to this bill. That's what we think, that's our assumption, is going to trigger the flow into, hey, what does usage look like today? How's it trending? Answering questions like that. So trigger to the flow, I get a bill. The assumption is that users know where to find usage data for a project or a group. I think one of the things we still need to sort out is, does this live at a group usage quota? Does this live in a namespace usage quota? Like where do you go see this data? And so we can work through that or use some of that previous research. As I started putting together slices of things, before I do slices, let's talk through. So the top level is find the bill. That's kind of outside of the flow, where it's what triggers the flow. Then find the groups and projects that are sending data to the managed cluster. Again, we might be able to skip that step and jump straight to let me just view data that would contribute to the last bill. So view a group's usage for the last billing period, view projects usage for the last billing period. And then we think the next logical step, because a number in isolation isn't useful, is compare it to the period before first. So you can see if you got a big jump in your bill, you can see, hey, what contributed to that? That's what I want to see immediately, of what jumped up in usage quite a bit. So comparing the group's usage month over month, comparing a project's usage month over month, and then maybe comparing within a specific date range. And that might be, let's give them a date picker and show only the data for those. That could be a future iteration. We might move that down. And then viewing this month to date. That's kind of the follow-on of, so last month we had this much usage. How are we doing this month? How does it compare? So being able to see that to date, this is how much you've used compared to last month to date. So are you already trending ahead of where you were in the month you got a surprise bill versus, or is it trended back down? We think that those are the kind of key components of the flow that someone's going to want to look at. And then trying to figure out what's the next thing they're going to do with that data. I think is an unknown. That's something we need to go figure out. So then, as I was thinking about this, of putting together a mock or wireframe and looking at it with users, some of the things that I thought we would learn are what data is most important to the user, what org level is most important, that organization being, do I care about it mostly at the group? Do I care about it mostly at the project level? What is the right granularity for the person getting the bill? In the comparison, it's what other data might they need. So if we show them the comparison in the wireframe and they say, hey, that's not actually useful to me, I need this other piece of data because XYZ. And then what data they need to be confident going forward. Do they want just where they're at today, or where they would end up at the end of the month trended, like further back in confidence to create kind of a trending, starting to understand, hey, how do we project forward usage for you of what it could look like? And then on the right side here, I have some unknowns that we need to get some answers from the engineering team about. Can project usage easily be rolled up into a group? Like, do we have that logical concept? And can historic project usage easily be queried? We know that can be, or I assume that could be a performance hit of, hey, I need to go back and see how many things were consumed for each of my projects over the last 6 months. That could be a really big query if we're not storing that data somewhere. So what considerations do we have there? What am I missing?
I have one thing that comes into mind, and I don't know if it's more on the assumption side or the learning objective, but we don't necessarily know who is gonna be the main person using that. So my assumption is that the person actually purchasing extra click events is not necessarily the person that is gonna use dashboards and instrument anything. So there's kind of like difference between buyer persona and user persona in a way. Yeah, so maybe in the learning objective is to kind of make this crisper and to understand, who is actually going to use this, because that's very likely to help us better understand how we can tailor the flow for this type of person.
Yeah.
And
I,
where the entry points are, which might be different. Because like if
yeah,
you're more likely to use the product analytics features, then I guess for us to have some kind of prompt or link from there makes sense. But if you're not someone that goes there a lot, but you're still someone that kind of manages everything related to billing in your company, then we need to figure out where should this live.
yeah. Based on experience with the CI minutes, it's going to be this, the buyer is the one looking at this, not the user. And so we don't necessarily need an entry point out of the dashboard back into the usage quota. We need to understand if we can get them from a bill into usage quota though, if that's the right
Yeah.
place to do that. Or if
Yeah.
there's another logical way to link them to this easily. Okay, cool.
That
I
makes
added
sense.
that assumption and the learning objective of who's actually going to use this. Cool. Okay. So there's some to-dos still here, I think, just from a sketch out what we think would be the right, or the next step, sketch out what we think is the right trigger. And then we
Yeah.
can start putting together some mocks to, I think, show folks or use to validate with the team of, is this feasible to go build?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for walking through that with me.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, well, that gets us to the end of our agenda today. Anything else?
Nope.
Right.
All good.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. Have
All
a great
right.
rest of your day.
You too. See you around.
Cheers.